Hi there, it's Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More Worldwide TV Network, formerly the Women's Broadcast TV Network, ITube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, all the platforms around the world. And I really wanted to do this show today, and I'm minus my co-host, which bums me up. So I was telling Clarissa earlier, I got to have you guys back on a Tuesday night so you can meet the girls. So with this,
okay, awesome.
Clarissa, since you came on first, let's introduce you first. Clarissa Felts, go.
Hi, Clarissa Felts here. I'm a producer working with Matt Struck LLC and Productions, and I've been working in independent films now for a couple of years, and met Tiffany Rhodes and just fell in love with the work she's doing and her approach to filmmaking. And so that's how I really built a passion. My history was more in corporate events and corporate production, but I really wanted to get into something more like independent filmmaking. And so that really is how I got started in this area.
And Tiffany, tell us who you are, where you came from.
I am, let's see where I came from. I'm originally from the Bay Area in California. And I have, I myself too worked kind of in a corporate environment most of my 20s, but I had always had a love for film and started making films at a very young age. I was like, probably like equivalent to like a Dawson's Creek kind of nerdy kid with the camera and having the neighborhood kids, you know, reenact these stories for me. And so I was really able to get back to it. In 2016, I wrote my first screenplay, and I did really well in festivals. And then the following year, I went to Sicily. That was my directorial debut, and I made a foreign film there. And been very lucky and very, yeah, just been very lucky for all the support I've had in such a short time.
I know, congratulations on that. That's not easy. I'll get into what it's like to pick films for a film festival. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Always broke the rules on things. I'll tell you that in a little bit. But what is it like to be, and I call this the 5 wins, to be that actress, that producer, that writer, that actor, that editor. Some of the best editors were women. And I always remind people that in case you need a history lesson, go back to the 30s, 40s, and the 50s. A lot of those women, they were some of the best editors till this day. So I always want to congratulate women in that, because that's a major thing, and I never take that lightly. And I'm not even an actor, but having, you know, interviewed a lot of those famous people, that's really, really important to me, because it's about women. This is your time to shine the last 7 years. And I have to always remind my women co-hosts, this is you. This is the more part. Us guys, if you're smart, we're here to support what you guys are doing.
Well, that's really kind of you. Yeah, I mean, I always feel like there's...
I say it because it's true.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that when people ask me, like, you know, how did you get started? It's so impossible. And I said, you know, I think we'd all like to believe that there's such a tight fist around, you know, Hollywood, and that it is really impossible to have a successful film career. And, you know, there's so many politics and, you know, who's worth this and who's worth that. But at the end of the day, a brilliant story, a story that's thought-provoking and can make us either examine ourselves, examine our society, the world, or just get us totally lost in all those things. That's what we want to see. And so I appreciate you saying that. There's a lot of great female filmmakers that, you know, I always think about American Psycho. Like, people are always shocked that a woman directed that. I'm like, really? Like, what? Women make films like that? I'm like, yeah, we do. We're twisted too.
Well, here's the thing on that. I did the interviews for American Psycho when Christian Bale was kind of first starting out. I was there. Okay. Sophia Cloper did her first film. So it's nice. Yeah. Again, it's nice to see those things. And you mentioned Dawson's Creek. Now I'm really aging myself. I was there when it first aired, interviewing the original cast. So that's how far I go back, because you could see the hair coming out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Talk about this. Talk about bringing the corporate world in. It's very, very important. And a lot of people don't realize that. So when I would go to a lot of the parties, I was always watching how everything was being set up. I always wanted to meet those people. I didn't go towards the actors or producers. I was going towards the corporate people because I wanted to know what's your involvement in this? How do you do this? Because without, as Denzel Washington said to me sometime one time, he goes, Brian, there's no business without the show. And then there's no show without the business. And
the business, yeah.
I said that, and that's where the corporate came in. So Clarissa, this was your ballpark at one point. Talk about that.
Well, you know, it's interesting, Brian, because when I first met Tiffany and another business colleague, I really didn't realize the similarities in the business part of this. I had done production work with event production for corporate, but I had an accounting background, a business background, undergraduate business degree. I had no idea how much business there was in filmmaking. It makes total sense of the importance, but it really, that made me more intrigued than ever to be a part of making something making art and really getting involved in something so much more creative. So that was what intrigued me and really sparked me to want to move out of the corporate world and into something much more fulfilling and really energizing. And again, I'll just add to, as far as Tiffany was she's so amazing because she's so capable in terms of and extraordinary in terms of writing and directing and cinematography. I've seen her do every job on a set. And she does it so brilliantly, and she writes such a brilliant story, and is such a gifted storyteller that I think we all, as you know, part of the crew, just want to deliver on that. And she makes it so crystal clear what she's trying to accomplish in her vision that becomes just totally energizing in terms of working on a crew with Tiffany as a director.
So Tiffany, talk about this. Writers are always, they're very, very important. I would always tell people when a book was written into a movie, I don't go to the movies to read the book. And the reason I said that because you had those rabid people who loved the book, and then, you know, adapting it and turning it into a movie is not always, it's not easy. Let's put it that way.
No.
Didn't transfer because you got to get it all into 2 hours. But the thing when it came to writers, the written word was God to them. They wrote those words and they wanted that performer to say that. Are you like that type of writer also?
Yes and no. I think I probably contradict myself on this. You know, I write with so much intent and layers, but I also am very malleable. And if it doesn't work and I see that it's not working, there's no ego in changing it. Like, my ultimate goal is to tell an amazing, fascinating story. And if something that I've written or has, you know, is holding me back from that, I'll cut it. I'm a very heavy dialogue writer, and I know going into every production, I'm gonna have to cut dialogue. And I know that breaks actors' hearts, but that is part of it. And so I think it's a fine line. And if your choice is always to make the story better, you really can't go wrong.
Well, that's also, I mean, I think of my good friend, he's with us, Robin Williams. You know, his first take is he would read the script the rest of us. The other 14 to 20 takes was it his own. And all the time they always chose his own because it was Robin Williams. So, you know, when you had a comedian or, you know, Al Pacino, well, they'll read it, but then, you know, you get a take on stuff. And what do? As that director, as that writer, as that editor you are, you get a chance to take that, which is good. And you make it because it makes everybody better, right?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, there's something to, you know, working with that type of intelligent actor who is really trained and knows their craft, that they're coming from a place where they're making decisions subconsciously as that character. And that I believe in honoring. And that's important when you have someone who can really do that, who gets lost in that character, and then they're doing things and responding as them. That's where you're channeling like pure art. And that's really, really exciting. But I also have respect for theater actors who, they don't get to change their line. You know, they have to do Shakespeare and people, you know, are watching it and we have to feel something from that. So, yeah, I think it just depends on the actor and the story.
Clarissa, what's the easiest and what's the hardest thing when it comes to independent film that you found now that you're on the artist side? Because you could take that corporate world and do your best to mix it, but they're still divided, aren't they?
They are. The business side has to always be done. It's the accounting has to be done. The hiring of people has to be done. The back end, the financing has to be done, you know, so all of those things are so important and critical on, you know, throughout the filmmaking to make it successful. So that certainly holds true. And I think as far as what's the hardest thing, wow. You know, I guess I'll go with the easiest thing. The easiest thing is getting your mind wrapped around and excited about a great story. For example, the ones, you know, that I've been involved with Tiffany, the stories are so amazing and so well, just the descriptions and are so amazing that you know exactly what the expectation is. So that makes that easy to get excited and enthusiastic about. I guess the most difficult thing is really the pre-production is so important and critical, and planning that timing. It's easy to get excited and want to shortchange that and jump right into filmmaking. And I think it's hard to force that and make sure that that's going to happen on, you know, in the detail that it needs to happen. So I guess that's the hardest thing in my mind. I don't know if Tiffany would agree, but I think it's so important in terms of the success, and it's a challenge because you get excited and you just want to move into filmmaking.
Tiffany, if you
Yeah,
have,
I mean, I would feel like in the indie world, pre and post production are the most neglected, and it's a lot of it is lack of experience and understanding that, yeah, you have a script, but there's all these different pieces that you need to prepare for, and you know, and communication, and then post, I feel like, is very neglected. That's why there's so many things we never see, so many films that never come to light, because production eats up the budget, or you know, there's mistakes that are made and there's no room, there's no contingency plan in post to help you as an independent filmmaker correct those things, spend the right of time on editing, sound design, which, you know, I go to so many festivals and I'm like, you know, that's an important part of filmmaking is sound. And so I would agree with Clarissa, just add post to that.
so when it comes to film festival, I always tell people this. They always had this thing as a 10-minute rule. That's a load of crap. I never did that. That's disrespectful to the filmmakers, the writers, producers, directors. I always, till this day, watch the film from beginning to end, starting in 1991. I've been keeping track of all the films I've watched till this day, whether it was in the theaters or on home video, I would always say. Last year, we watched everything on home video. I'm embarrassed to say I only saw 3 movies on the screen last year. 3. I would have never.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I'm used to seeing at least 130 on the screen, at least that, but 700, between 700 and 708 on home video. That's where I should always year. And it's always been that year since 1992, because in 1991, I couldn't tell you till this day how many movies I watched. That's why I started keeping track and by hand. So when it comes to film, there's a lot of good films that have never seen the light of day because of the stupid 10-minute rule. So and the reason why I wanted to know, I was doing voiceovers, so I always wanted to know who did the voiceovers. I wanted to know who did the editing. You know, you guys work hard doing all the stuff. Who did the catering? Was it shot in New York? Was it shot in Wisconsin? Those things made a big deal to me because I was the one who was going to do the interviews. And I wanted to make sure whether it was a good film or not. I may not like the film, but I knew there's always an audience that will. And that's why it separated us from a Sundance. I always tell people, don't submit to Sundance, submit to Santa Barbara Film Festival, submit to Atlanta, you know, Southern films. Have that nice buildup, and then you get a nice little following. And then become friends with that director and get a waiver instead of spending $50 for each film festival and no one watches your movie.
Exactly. That was kind of my path, the same thing. You know, and the smaller festivals and the independent you know, down to the smaller independent festivals, to the independent film magazines. Like, those are all people like you that just love film and they're committed to it. And I think oftentimes people forget to support them, because those are the people that want the stories, and they'll gamble on you because they truly love cinema. And that's something that I will never, I wouldn't be able to do anything without the support of those people. And it's important to give back and to make sure that you're checking in with them. It's so hard to run film festivals. It's expensive, and there's not a lot of thank yous. And so yeah, I think that's amazing what you've done.
So when it comes to that, talk about Collision, talk about Blackbird interviews. What was all of that like to do those things? And do you consider yourself a good editor? Do you like to edit?
I think, you know, I think every great director is a great editor. I think they go hand in hand. I don't think you should always be the one who's sitting there cutting, but I think when I set out to do my shot list, you know, I am very intentional with how am I going to edit this? How will this come together? I'm like that on set. And so I would say, you know, don't hire me to be your editor. I can edit. It's a huge part of what I do. I have an editor that I work with now, Eric Randolph. He's a recent college grad, and I think we're going to see amazing things from him. He has talents that he's just so fast. Yeah, I consider myself, you know, an editor, just not for hire.
Clarissa, when you stepped on her first sets, what was that like for you?
It was I was just so amazed of being behind the scenes and what all is required, I guess, to make things happen, and getting locations and getting with officials on permissions to use certain areas of, whether that be a public building or a park, or and thinking about insurance policies that have to, you know, all the details that go along with that. There's so much to think about when you're shooting, besides the story and the crew, getting the crew and getting the actors and all of that. There's just so much to making sure the scenes are everything that you want them to be. So I think that was what was so surprising and also invigorating, because it's a lot of fun to make all that happen.
Yeah. So now we get into, what is it like to shoot post-COVID, even though we're only, I tell people, this is a 5-year thing that we're going to be involved with. We got another 4 years to go with this, masks, vaccines, and everything like that. How do you shoot with mask on and everything like that? There's a great photo of you, Clarissa, that I love. It's the best one that I've seen of you. I think you're behind the camera looking at what it was done. You know, you have a couple people behind you wearing a mask.
Yes.
It's a great photo, whoever took that. But also, one of the other things I like, I watched Shameless in the 11th season. They were the first out to be shooting with their mask and everything like that, because they were shooting in Chicago. So it was interesting to see what they were doing with some of the close-ups, some of the sex scenes and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, how did they shoot that? Because it goes back to you as that director, as though that partnership. How do you guys shoot safely now? And then Clarissa, that gets into, now you have to have extra insurance, whether you can afford it or not. You know, that's not easy.
Oh, and the test alone, you know, cost us, I think, around 30 grand just to, you know, I was tested 3 times a week because I was in zone A. So we followed all of the union, you know, regulations. And so we'd use PCR tests. And, you know, it was scary for me because oftentimes I was directing, I would be directing, and then sometimes I shoot too. And I camera operated quite a bit in this film. And I had makeup on, and in 15 minutes, I was going to have to go in to do my scene. And so I was compromised because when you're the actor, you don't put the mask on when you've got your full makeup on. You're supposed to be like in your zone. But everyone was really respectful. And it was a miracle that, you know, we got through production. I quarantined away from my family so that I was worried if I get it, the whole production goes down, the money that was invested, the people who, put their life on pause for me. So I didn't see my family for 7 weeks. And so we took it extremely seriously. And it is challenging and stressful.
And it's mentally challenging. People don't realize that. It's so mentally challenging because you can't really make a mistake. You know how hard to make a mistake? And I'm like, okay, I've always been wiping stuff down, whether I was in the studio or out, even on location. I was putting the floors in for sound and stuff like that, but I was always wiping everything down because I didn't want anybody to trip. Now you have to make sure that no one trips, but also that they don't really get sick. And it's on us, and that's a lot of responsibility. Clarissa, what was that like? Because I'm sure you had to deal with a little bit of that also.
Well, I'll speak to, in terms of food, food handling with a crew and cast with COVID was very challenging because there's no more, you can't do buffets. Everything has to be individual and individually, handled with gloves, and you have to have hand washing stations, and food has to be marked and designated for each one of us individually because no one else can handle it. So
Wow.
it is a tremendous challenge to execute and get right. And it's much more expensive to handle, again, because you can't do group meals. You can't have like group service as far as a buffet. It's
the crafty table looked a lot different. Yeah.
It was everything individually wrapped on the crafty table. And then any kind of meal was individual as well. And so that adds tremendous expense as well as logistics to make that happen.
You just brought up something I hadn't thought of. So what's it like when do you have to break up the certain lunch now or dinner now, or how do you do that now? Because you can't really all eat together, right?
We had staging areas. Some of the actors would eat even in their dressing room, and the crew, we were very blessed in terms of having great space, I think, too. And we had tremendous weather that cooperated so that we could really have safe spaces for eating in a reasonable time frame and all eat at the same time.
Yeah, we had to pretty much eat at the same time on a tight schedule, an independent project, and SAG recommended 10-hour days versus 12-hour days, which most people in the independent world were used to that. But for the well-being and not just trying to take care of everyone's immune systems, we had to all take lunch at the same time. But we were on this huge property where like social distancing was never a problem. People would sit out. We filmed by a lake, and they would sit out, and we got, that was one of the wins that we had. But the industry was kind of like they hadn't made that union agreement until a week before, 4 days before shooting. And so we had to pivot and make a ton of changes and resubmit all those things to SAG, which the other producer did. And it was pretty stressful, but we were able to do it.
Well, here's what you can do. The Redding area in Mount Shasta area in Northern California, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So our ranch is up there called the Dream River Artist Ranch. Sometime after, I'll let you, if you need a location, we have 36 acres at the 5, 4, and 42. The rest of that is pristine. So 10 of that for growing our own food. 5 of that is for some of our tiny houses, some of our tiny townhouses. A lot of the stuff is shot outside. So we have our own water rights. I have a lot of stuff that I found around the world of stuff. So I'm gonna open this to you. You get a chance that you can have a location sometime after August, September, that you can shoot on our ranch if you want to. How's that?
Wow, that's so generous of you. That would be amazing. Our next project's a Western, so it might really work out. But that's incredible. Thank you. It's so generous.
Yeah, everything on this ranch is environmentally friendly, sustainable, and it'll be the first test model for net zero. Meaning we have a hydro water plant on it, a couple other things on it. There's technology that I found that the US has never seen before. Everything will be on our property. So think about going to Disneyland and Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars. That's kind of what our ranch is set up. And because last year was the year a lot of artists, this is the toughest year to be an artist last year. That's why.
Yeah.
So this is why you always want to support these independent filmmakers and the stuff that they do. I might not like the film. There's always someone else that will like it. And some people will see it down the road and be inspired by these things. That's why I like doing these interviews, because that's what it's meant out to be. I remember doing his first interview when he was on ER. George and I become his publicist, and that's those things like that are special to me, because there's so many people dying, and it's very, very sad. So you always want to help the artists, because it's hard out there for independent work.
Absolutely. We did an Instagram series, where I had crew and actors from all over the world. And we had people in probably Italy, Canada, Russia, and it was all self-taped, but I wrote like 6 episodes, and everyone would self-tape, and we together kind of combated our depression and anxiety of not being able to be together, because as a painter, I painted during COVID, but with filmmaking, it's collaborative, and it was lonely. It was lonely for everyone. And I wanted to do something to like bring people together and remind us that this will be over someday. And we have to take care of each other. We have to be there for each other and allow that creative space and encourage it, even in the darkest of times.
And that's why we call it the Dreamweaver Artist Ranch. It's set up for people who are poets and things like that, people who've lost their homes. It's very, very sad. We will be fine, but there's so many people around the world that will not. So that's why my partner, Marta Q. Pope-LeBeau, named it like that. Clarissa, what was it like when you were locked down? What were you going through? How did you deal with that?
Well, I did a lot of, I focused a lot on exercise, some physical exercise, because that seemed to sort of calm my spirit and my mind, and I guess made me tired, so I wasn't quite as anxious over the whole situation. I found that outdoor exercise was sort of my answer to dealing with the insanity of it all.
Yeah. I was always telling actually 8 of the girls out of the 13 girls who were in the world of fitness. I would always joke to them, but I was serious with them, because they know I tell them things ahead of time. If I tell you something, you know what's going to happen. They know that now. It took them years to figure it out. So I go, what would happen if you can't go to the gym one day? And I kept saying it as of May 2018. I'm like, what will happen if you can't go to the gym? Something's going to happen. Oh, I would always go to the gym. Guess what? Did you ever see the day where we can't go to the movies in Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago? And the plays and everything. I predicted all these things going back to May of 2018. I picked Kamala Harris and Joe Biden May of 2018. It's a record. It's on tape of me saying that when we only had 2 million views a day and counting. Now we have 6.7 million views a day and counting. So what I'm saying, Tiffany, when I say after August, September, you can have a place if you want to shoot. You can have a place if you want to shoot. And the reason for that is it's going to be hard to find housing for certain things. With marching bands and drum corps, this is the first year ever that they couldn't go out on tour because you couldn't get kids in busing. You couldn't have more than that.
Oh, terrible.
So I was thinking of what it's like to shoot independent film. Outside is where a lot of things have to be done now. Inside is a lot tougher. And you can see how all the production is slowing down. So congratulations for you guys getting stuff done, because it's not going to be easier. It'll be a lot more challenging. It doesn't mean it can't be done, because it still can be.
Absolutely.
And this is where you guys come in, and then we have the outlet to help support, because that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It takes art has to be fostered, and it has to be respected and supported. And I think, I hope that we've taken this time as a culture and society to say, have we done that? Have we supported the next generation with music and film studies and art? And the answer is no. And a world with no art is a sad, sad world, and it's limited. And I know yesterday was David Lynch's birthday, and he's one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. And I'm going to misquote this, but it's something like, life is very complicated. And so it's okay to make complicated films. And I hope that this time they'll be hard. And I don't know that some people will ever recover generationally from this. That there is some good that comes from it, like the generosity of you and other people, making sure that the art doesn't get swallowed up and dies.
Well, one of the things that, first of all, David would like you. Be prepared to talk to him if you ever run into him for talking for an hour, because he would. He would like. And you know, the thing about this is, I got to thank Melinda, because Melinda and I kept in contact. She was representing the LA Greek Film Festival, and then I had the director on our show, and he liked what we did. And one of my co-hosts is Greek, Katerina Kazayas.
Okay.
Wanted to put that together. So when their film festival was doing well and it was extended an extra 5 days, I was very, very happy because we did our job. And I said, let's keep it going. So besides calling on Greeks around the world, I say this, I'm calling all women around the world to come on,
Yeah.
Reviews and More. So imagine that. Imagine.
That's beautiful.
That is wonderful.
Because right now, today we got 6.7 million. By April, imagine what the number we're going to have a day. Watch and see. And then you got a place that you can shoot. How many people offer you that, you know?
No, I mean, I love where you're coming from. I love your intuition on things. I think it's really refreshing. I think people are afraid to just say, here's what I feel and think is going to happen. And that you put yourself out there so honestly. It's really refreshing. And I think it's much needed from all of us. I think it's very cool.
Well, like I said, you know, I noted and dated everything. You know, when we were in Nashville, Tennessee, it was we had our own panel. I want to make sure that we always have our own panel of women, and it's about promoting their brands. And from that, I say only because I knew what the number was going to be, where it's going to go. We only had 2 million views a day and counting that. That was June 24th when we did our show. That show that we did, and only one of the 4 is posted up, is at 1,086,000 views and still counting, not on YouTube. Just out of Tennessee, what does that tell you? So I said, if we can do that there, why can't this be sprung up in a bigger and different way? And that's what we've been doing. So that's why I say, you know, I wanted to talk to you two, because it's important. You made some films. You got to get the word out there, because I can't tell you where half the stuff is going. We don't know as critics where a lot of the stuff is going, and that's not. How does that help that filmmaker? How does that help that producer? It doesn't. I can't tell you where some of the stuff is going, because we're not getting all the same things anymore. So I've been bringing in film critics and say, hey, let's do a show. You're seeing stuff on Amazon Prime. You're seeing stuff on Apple. I don't have time to watch Apple. I've been watching Netflix and everything else, but we just, it's not, there's so many outlets now, you know?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, it's hard. The net has so many holes. Yeah, it's hard to catch it all. I think it's amazing. And I know I appreciate the support, especially, you know, as a woman. I try to always focus on the storytelling, and people always say like, well, what are your plans to do stuff for women in film and television? I'm like, work really hard to make such work that can stand next to the same brilliant male directors that really influenced me, and not be about man and woman, but just be like director to director. I don't want to be the best female director, you know. I want to be the kind of director that, you know, inspires people, and hopefully wakes people up, because I think a lot of us are asleep, and film and art can do that. It can help make us aware of this crazy reality that we live in.
We got about 2 minutes. So Clarissa, give your social media links, how people can reach out to you. Any of those future investors can reach out to help. It's in small independent filmmakers.
That would be wonderful. On Instagram, Clarissa Felts. That's my Instagram link. So we would love to hear from anyone interested in supporting independent films. We would so appreciate that. Love to collaborate. That would be tremendous. Thank you so much.
And Tiffany?
I'm mostly on Instagram at it's Tiffany Rhodes. I think that's my Instagram. Yeah, it's Tiffany Rhodes on Instagram.
So give a rundown of your films real quick and why people should see them. Go ahead.
I play a lot with the malleability of humanity, and I don't like telling stories right on the nose. I like to layer things. I like to break down barriers and hopefully make people realize that none of us are all that different, and that even in darkness we can find compassion, humility, and I really like complicated protagonists because we're all complicated, and I love the idea of redemption and what that looks like. And I hope that, yeah, I mean, I love telling complicated stories.
So which one of your films right now is on Amazon Prime?
Collision is on Amazon Prime. That's a short film. It's about 28 minutes. And then we just got finished shooting the feature film Match Truck that I'm very, very excited about. So I think it's my best work so far.
All right. So your social media links one last time. You can never give it out too many times.
On Instagram, Clarissa Felts, Felts.
And Tiffany?
Instagram at it's Tiffany Rhodes.
Okay. So with that, I want to thank both of you for being here because I felt really, really important. And as I would always say to people, if you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours because the world needs it. I am Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, and we will see you next week.